Hello, hello. Okay, hello. It's great to be here with you. Uh, I called this presentation when your boss decides to have an architecture team. Actually, I wanted to call it somehow else. I wanted to call it would be nice to have someone to design a system I would implement. But to be honest, I don't know any single developer that would say that and that would sign under this. And to be honest, it would be stupid to sign under this. Uh, my name is Krzysztof Dębski. I worked for past 9 years as an architect. It was a bunch of different names. It was enterprise architect, platform architect, system architect, software architect, solution architect, etc. And to be honest, it means now it meant nothing. Every time I did the same stuff. So it doesn't matter what type of architect you are or you deal with. We will discuss about all of them. So if it's not come from developers, so why the hell we need architects? Why do we need? Why do we have them in our companies? It all starts with this strategy, vision, and values. As we work for the bigger companies, we all know these yearly meetings where we discuss the values. I even remember the meeting when I had to prepare a song, just like PZU, about values in my company. It was so embarrassing that I tried to forget it, but it's really hard. So I always wondered how people design this strategy and how people design and what people think about when they think about strategy. So Simon Wardley came here to help, and he designed the system to prepare the universal strategy builder. Even one guy developed it, and if you want to build a strategy for your company, you can go to this Heroku app and just build it for you. This one is the one that I built a couple of days ago, and to be honest, it's purely perfect for any company that I worked with. So basically, you can go there and pick one that you want. But that's just a funny strategy. But if you look at the companies, they think about the real strategies and that they try to build in their companies. So in one that I worked for, there was two strategic goals that we had. One of them was it might be quite good because it was like 50% of requests are served from microservices. It was quite nice goal, but it had one simple issue with this. We didn't know how to measure it. So just after the year passed, we decided, yeah, we passed this goal. We served 50% from microservices because we didn't know how to measure it. The second one was given to us from our CEO. You have 6 months to refactor your application and to write it in your new way. You say a lot about microservices, write it, you have 6 months. Well, this strategy was so abstract and it was so unrealistic that we knew at the very first day that we won't pass it, and we didn't do anything about this. But if you look at the companies, there's one strategy that is quite universal and that I really like. We will be the Uber of payments. We will be Uber of e-commerce. We will be Uber of something else. So that's the strategic goal that any CEO might give you and might be happy with this. But if you look at the strategy and the real life, there's one thing about this strategy just given is the slowest way to achieve the victory. But if we don't have strategy, we just have tactics, it's just a chaos. So we don't know in which direction we want to go. So strategy is quite important, but we don't know how to connect them to the tactics, to everyday work. So who should be responsible for synchronizing strategy and tactics? If you ask any of the top managers, they would tell you nothing. Usually, they would look at the into the books, they would look into the internet and look for the answers. And when they search for help, they found a lot of different frameworks. And in even old frameworks like the old ugly TOGAF, and in the new framework like the SAFe, like Scaled Agile, there is a role of architect, the one that the one that should connect strategic and tactics. So if we have the architect in this frameworks, maybe we should look for the one. So how to look for the architect? Let's post a job posting. I looked at all of the job postings that was posted to LinkedIn, and this is really funny because if you look at them, there is two words in one job posting. One of them is the new one, microservices, Kubernetes, and in the same posting there is UML2, TOGAF, etc., all the old stuff. Actually, this is the phrase from the real posting. I really like the microservices 5+ years experience. I really remember 2014, it was 5 years ago, when Martin Fowler said, microservices is a new hot term and we will do it that way. It was 5 years ago. I wonder where those people with more than 5 years experience in microservices come from. So it's almost impossible to find someone like this. So let's look for someone in the company. Usually we look for the smartest developer or the one that just want to be an architect, but I don't know people like this. So we give him a new role. You will be an architect. So what's the next? He goes to Quora and asks, I am an architect, what should I do? What should I read? What should I do to be effective? This question was taken, the screenshot was taken about 3 months ago, but it appears every couple of months, so it appears all the time. No one knows what architects should do. So there's a nice book, at least the title is nice, 97 things every software architect should know. When you read the reviews at Amazon, you know what's the best in this book? You just need to read the titles. 97 titles and you know everything. You don't need to read the book. And the titles are at the Amazon, so you can go there. So what is the purpose of the architecture? I really like Gartner, because it's so abstract and so sometimes stupid that I really like to read them. So this is the purpose of architecture. I stopped reading at the holistically because the number of buzzwords was so high that I cannot read it. Actually, this is just the first paragraph. There are a couple of more there about what is the architecture. So no, that's not the way we want to go. So let's look again at the job postings. So who is the architect? What's the purpose of architecture? If we look at the postings, this is the real phrases from the job postings. You can see that this is just a one-man band. He should do everything everywhere. He should be responsible for performance. He should be responsible, or she should be responsible for scalability, but they should also perform in-depth analysis of code. So should be everywhere. I don't know people like this. But I was at the talk of Adam and Joanna, and they said that people usually fulfill 60% of requirements at the job posting. So maybe because of that, there are so many strange things in the postings. So that's also not the thing that I would like to focus on. I really like the one phrase that for me is the essence of the architecture. Architecture represents a significant decision where the significance is the cost of changing them in the future. It doesn't matter whether it's performance, scalability, etc., etc. There are some decisions that should be made and should be made in the organization, and someone should be responsible for those. So how to recognize the person that is a good architect. Or to be honest, there are so many bad architects that I would like to discuss with you how to deal with bad one. Because it's more probability that you would face the bad architect than you would face the good architect. So the first thing I really like, if you see architect that use UML, run. You basically don't need UML in your real life. But there's one asterisk. If you work in highly legacy systems, if you work with SAP and other stuff, then you are in this UML legacy world, then this is not for you, but you still might think about some other things of modeling or sharing knowledge. So what I don't like in UML is the middle letter, model. What I really like in my everyday work is just building diagrams. What is the difference between diagram and model? If you look at the diagram, it's the single purpose sketch. It might be done on the piece of paper, it might be done on the whiteboard that has one purpose and should be understandable by every participant that is in the room without any other special knowledge, special language, etc. Everyone should look at it and understand it should be self-descriptible. So what are the ways to build models, not only by architect, because if it's built only by architect, it's usually bad model. It should be built by all the people that are interested in building good architecture and good products. So one of those ways of building good diagrams is event storming. I highly encourage you to dig in event storming because it's the really good way to not only share the knowledge, but share the understanding of the way how the system works. It's a good way to discuss with business because we discuss on the business events layer of our system. So it's a good way to share the understanding. But as I said, in UML, you need to know how to model. You need to know the building blocks, etc. What is really important in event storming is also the common understanding. One really important part of modeling session is to build a legend, just to let every participant to know what every single color of sticker means. Because there are some predefined colors, but sometimes you are not able to just gather them from the market, or they are just quite expensive because only Post-it makes stickers in the specific colors. The second way of building just simple diagrams is a user story mapping. It's a really nice way of building the common understanding and building the ways of the future releases, how to release in future our applications, just to make the whole journey of users releasable and how to make this journey efficient for the users. So that's the other way of building the common understanding. It's also really understandable by the business people. And just going back to the code, if we look at the more proper way of modeling or making diagrams of our system, is a nice way of modeling prepared by people from the coding architects. It's a C4 modeling. Because if we look at the models, at the diagrams, it should it should show only the single layer of abstraction. So we have 4 layers of abstraction. The first one is the system layer. We have just the user and some systems that cooperate with each other. We have container levels, which is literally beneath systems. We have components, which is closer to the code, and just the classes, which is really what we developers do. What is really also important, if you look at this, there are descriptions in every single box. There are unidirectional lines. There are no different connections between artifacts representing different ways of communications between components or artifacts. And there are a lot of phrases that describe what exactly this connection means. And what is also important, the common understanding. Every single model should also have some legend and should have description what every single block means, because we should understand it just by looking, not by learning it for the weeks. And this brings us to ubiquitous language. Ubiquitous language is the term provided by Eric Evans from DDD. And here it has two meanings. The first one is that the common set of abstraction is much more important than a common notation. If we understand each other, it's just better for us to use this set of tools than use just the common one that is on the market. And the second one is that we should discuss in the same language, both in business side and in a technical side. The second thing good architects should do, or we should do if we look at the good architects, is the trade-offs. Trade-offs are everywhere. If you look at this picture, I think that there are some of you that recognize this. This is the CO2 filter from Apollo 13. If you watched the movie about Apollo 13, you know that there was some serious issues on this rocket, and there were 3 people that had to continue journey in the lunar module that was only able to handle 2 people, and there were no enough CO2 filters to bring them back to Earth. And if we look at this, there was some serious issue. They had a lot of filters from command module that didn't fit the lunar module. They had to make the most famous hack in the space industry. They had to do something to fit square filters to circle adapters. So it's the most common known, the most known thing where the standards wasn't in place, so they had some issues. But should we really focus on that? It wasn't the core feature of this lunar module. They weren't supposed to use it to land on this. So if we look at the architect, there is a strong urge to standardize everything, to use single language, to use single framework, to use the single ways to build our applications. But it's not the efficient way to build our applications. So if you look at the architect that claims that you should use standard ways to build application, ask them whether it is our core of our business, whether we should really use it in the standard way. Maybe this is a supporting way. Maybe this is, if we look at the domain-driven design way, maybe this is just supporting domain. Maybe we don't need to be so strict about the standards. Maybe we can just experiment. Maybe we can just do some stuff in this applications or in the systems. And when we had to discuss whether to use standards or not, there always came a term technical debt. There is no possibility to build so complex systems as we build right now without doing some trade-offs. There's no possibility to do it all the good ways. So there's always some technical debt that we had to manage. So again, where this technical debt comes from? It comes from the usabilities. It not comes from the functionalities that we built into the systems. It comes from all these non-functional requirements. And Again, there's even some standard for non-functional requirements. This is ISO 25010, and it has all the non-functional requirements we might have in our systems. And if you have some bad architect, they would claim that you should fulfill all the non-functional requirements in your system. It's not possible, because if you would do that, you would stop the business. So then you had to manage the technical debt. Good architect would manage the technical debt. As Martin Fowler prepared this quadrant, you had to think about technical debt, and you should think that, yeah, I know about this. I know that I did it not in the standard way, and I want to deal with the consequences. But that's my decision, not the decision of someone who is far from the code. If we think about people that are far from the code, there's also really important part of the architect job, that is collaboration. If we think about building architecture, it's not only the architect's role, it's the responsibility of everyone in the company. Architecture is something that is built into every single decision that we made in our code. So basically, there's an issue of the communication. I work with a couple of companies, and there are no single company that would say we don't have a communication problem. Everyone says, yeah, there are some issues. Sometimes it's because there are different cities that we are working in. Sometimes there are even different floors that we are in the building, and we had some issues with communication. There are always some communication issues if there is company of this size, more than one. So how to make these communication issues even higher with bad architect? We had some frameworks that encourage us to prepare some to make less communication than we would do right now. If we look at the classic waterfall, there was two places of communication, one before project and one after project, and that was the two phases where architects communicate with the team. If you don't see your architect often, if you don't see your architect every week, if he or she doesn't discuss with you about the current issues in the code and in the architecture, then it means that there's something wrong. You should talk to them and encourage them to discuss with you more. If we come from waterfall, there is a really huge urge to design everything up front, to make some good system analysis and to make some good software architecture. That represents bad architect. So if you want to make some final design up front, it means that there is something wrong with an architect. But you should also not do none of the design. You should just focus on the starting point, and you should focus on the way how to start, and focus on the direction where you want to build an application, where you all want to build your application. So maybe it won't lead you to the brand, to the really nice design of the system, but it will give you the nice direction, and you definitely would build something. So how to decide what to design first? Again, we have at least 3 different ways to design something. The first of them is proof of concept. And if you see the architect that comes to you with proof of concept, and they say that this is the design, you should think twice about this. Proof of concept doesn't address the really important stuff in the code. It just check whether the idea is feasible. So basically, you should look at the most viable product, so MVP. So you should think about what are the what is the hardest part of our code, what is the hardest part of the thing that we build, and that we should design first. So that we should think about first, not just the easy task that would do in the POC. There's also really big issue with no design upfront. So if we think about building new application or building just a new application that is really similar to the one that we already have, we might face the local optimization problem. You might think about the example of the company that operates on one market, has the e-commerce or some portal on one market in one country, and want to conquer some other countries. If you want to design upfront, you might just take the current components and try to fit them into new requirements. You just might prepare some local optimization. I was in the project that was driven by this, and it was just a failure. So you should have someone that would look some way beyond this local optimization and would look where should we go. Maybe we should go totally different way. Maybe the MVP is totally in the different place than we look right now. And when we do that this way, we would build the evolutionary architecture. As I mentioned before, all of you are responsible for the architecture. All your decisions or your single decision in the code is making architecture. So you should think about the architecture that like about the thing that is changed all the time and is changed by everyone. So you should prepare your architecture just to change every week, every month. This is also a good example in SAFe framework that in the framework it says that you should build the architectural runway. What is the runway? I like this metaphor, but the runway, this is just the next step that you want to go with your project. You should not build a long runway because you don't need it. You should just be one step ahead of your project. If you are further ahead, you probably build a bad architecture. I wanted to call it architecture versus technology, but it's not versus. It's architecture and technology. You cannot do architecture decision without taking in mind the technology limitations. I really like the title that today's developers are Ivory Tower architects of tomorrow. Why? Because if we do our refinement when we design our systems, we tend to think about, well, that's the implementation detail. We will focus on this in the couple of sprints ahead. We will think about this later. We will decide about technology later. I had the project that I run with my hipster colleague that decided it would be great to build something in Go. I really like the Go language. I'm really bad in Go language, but it was so stupid decision. This is the language that definitely didn't fit into our requirements. We had really simple, we didn't have a lot of users. We just wanted to make an MVP, and it was so hard to build something in this. And it was our mistake because our architecture, which was really simple, didn't have in mind that we want to build it in Go. It was misfit of those two decisions. You always had to think about architecture and technology. You cannot think about business architecture, process architecture, or some other high-level architecture without thinking about what is beneath. Because if you think about this, that's the straight way to build two ways: lack of understanding because no one would understand why your decision of architect, is this one, and lack of transparency. Because, well, if no one understands you, you don't make good decision, and it's hard to explain why you do that. So that's the hard part, because it's easy to fall in this trap, even if you are a good developer. And the last thing that I think about being good and bad architect is architecture team organization. For the last years, I worked in the various different setups, and if I think of them, most of them were some kind of fail. The first one was building the support team outside of the development teams. We built all the stuff that wasn't connected directly to building new features outside, so QA, release management, security, and architects. So that was strictly the old-fashioned way of building architecture team, and that was like in this waterfall model. Architects were the one that discussed before project and after project, and there was two different discussions. So that was the first fail. If you see something like this, it's hard to discuss to those architects, because you won't find the common layer to discuss. Really nice idea of architects is the idea of coding architects. I don't want to say that this is the bad idea. Architects should code. Architects should be close to the technology, as I mentioned before. But if you think about architect just as another member of the team, it's a strong urge just to for them just to spend all the time on coding. Why? Because it's fun, it's nice, and we see the results just the days after we do something. So architects should code, but if you see architects that just codes, it's something wrong. There are no architects that just there are developers. There are not architects. They are focusing on the different part of product. The pattern that I saw recently and I really like is the firefighter architect. This is actual Jira report from one of the projects. This is the number of assigned tasks to users in the project. Actually, more than half of tasks were resolved by the architect. I don't know how he did it, but that's how he worked. And I cannot imagine how long his day is, but it was too much work for a single person. You cannot be in every single place. You cannot be one-man band. I also worked in the team that consisted of more than 10 architects, and every single architect has his role. It was the payments architects, order architects, infrastructure architects, and data architect. It was good. They focused on their domains, and they're focused on their work really good. But there was one huge issue. We hadn't single goal. When we met and we wanted to discuss about the common architecture, we had nothing to discuss, unless it was really the code level, unless it was like whether we should use this tool to discover or this one. If we discuss about the architecture of the product that we built, we had nothing to discuss. So if you won't give the single goal to all of your team, it's hard to work with them. For the last half a year, I work as a self-employed consultant, and I want to build an architecture with the companies that I work with, but actually it is impossible. It's impossible to acquire architecture from outside. It's like the pig and the cow. Pig, chicken and the cow. If you are just a chicken, like the consultant, it's hard to work with the team. You had to be pig, chicken and the pig. Wow, it's the hardest part of this presentation, the name of the animals. So if you are just a chicken, you are not involved, you are not committed, you are just involved. You cannot be good architect, you're just the observer. You're just the one that look at the results, and that's all you do. And the pattern that I really like is what architects should focus on. I really like the idea of the T-shape people, like the generalist that can discuss about most of the topics on the general level, and the specialists in their domain. Actually, I learned recently that there are also P-shaped, that there should be at least 2 domains that you are specialist. There are also M-shapes, that you should be specialist in 3 domains. And I think that's the end of the letters, because I cannot imagine the letter with the 4 dashes. So I think M is the last one. You should be at least in 1 domain specialist. You should focus on one technical or business domain, but you should look at the whole company, at the whole on the all problems that you might face into. So just to make a quick recap, so how to recognize good architect? It should make diagrams, and it should discuss with you and on the level that everyone can understand. They shouldn't bring your own tools like UML, they should discuss your language. They should be sure that there are trade-offs everywhere. They shouldn't make you build all the standards tools everywhere. They shouldn't make you decide everywhere on the non-functional requirements. They should know that there are no the best in the world application that we can build. You should see them often. If you don't see them often, they are bad. They should collaborate with you. You should collaborate if you are architects. You or they shouldn't design too much upfront. You should design just a couple of weeks or sprints ahead, but you should have in mind the big picture. You should have in mind just the direction that you go. They should be focused on the technology that you use. They should be sure that the architecture you all build comply with the technology that you use. And they should be specialists. They should be coding architects. They should know how to code. They should be specialists in at least one domain. You shouldn't think that they would be specialists in all of the domains, but they should help you at least in one specialization. So that's all. If you see good architects, it's good for you. If you want to go the way that good architects go, it's good for you. If you see bad architects, please tell them go somewhere else. I just look if there are some question. Okay. Could you elaborate what exactly is bad about UML? Is it a particular type of diagrams that inherently bad, or the standard in general? From my perspective, the idea that you should upfront learn something and learn a lot of type of modeling just to be a partner in discussion is bad. If you are an architect, you should build something that is commonly understandable by your peers. There is one thing that is good about UML. You can use it as a single place of truth and build diagrams on top of that. It is a good way of using UML. If you don't use it that way, everything is bad about UML. In general, it is bad because you don't use it the way that they wanted to use it. Let's assume that CEO has established global architecture team consisting of people who haven't wrote any code since years. How to effectively sabotage them? I really like this. You don't have to. They would sabotage themselves. Really, if they are someone that don't write the code, don't understand the code, they are so far away from the tactic that you build every day, they would make wrong decisions, they would sabotage themselves. There is one small issue about this. They might be really close to CEO, and he or she, CEO, might listen to those bad architects. Well, you should do something in secret. I know some companies that had some global architecture team somewhere in other countries that decides about frameworks, that decides about all the stuff that developers should build, all the even the way that they should deploy all the stuff about the building application. And then I saw the smart CTO in Poland that was a filter that just translates something, did their stuff in Poland and translate to outside, because they have smart CTO. If you don't have someone that can just hide you from those people, then maybe you should change the company. About architecture team, you said that it was okay. Is it okay if an architect is out of the developer team? Does it move him from coding tasks? Doesn't it? I have to read it once again. Is it okay if architect is out of the developers team? Sometimes there are too few architects to be in every single team. Usually there are just a couple of architects that cooperate with teams. So they should work closely with code, because there are usually good developers, and they should use their time working with people and communicating with developers, just working on code. It's not possible to working 100% on code. It's even not possible to working on 50% of code, but they should always find some time to make some peer programming, to make some, maybe to make some tourism between teams, to just join a team for a sprint and to code something. Definitely architects should make something like this from time to time. Okay, so I think that was all the questions. So thank you again for joining me. If you have some more questions, I will be here for some time. Thank you.